Welcome, everyone. We're excited you could join us for today's webinar, Smart, Fast, and Ethical, Bringing AI to Life in Nonprofit and Government Work. Before we jump in, just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items to get us started. First, today's session is being recorded. I believe we hit record, Cass. I didn't see the message, but I assume we are recording anyway. Um, yep, good to go. Cool. So no need to keep track of everything as we go along. We will share a copy out with all of you and everyone that registered for the event afterwards. Second, we'll save time at the end for Q&A, but feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box as they come up. We'll address them in order when we get to Q&A, but also feel free to use the chat feature to share any comments or ideas throughout. And don't forget to set your messages to everyone so we can keep the dialogue open and collaborative. And some introductions to kick us off here. I am Brian Graves, VP of Engineering at Forum One, and all of us will be moderating today's session. And I'm joined today by Chris New, CEO of Exchange Design. Chris brings over 20 years of experience working for mission-driven organizations, combining strategic rigor with hands-on delivery across global donors, tech platforms, and community networks. And I'm also joined by Forum One's Director of Strategy, Beth Watson. Beth is a strategist and product thinker who's spent her career guiding teams through the ambiguity of innovation, helping organizations uncover what's next and design solutions that are both relevant and deeply rooted in audience needs. For those of you who may not be familiar with Forum One, we're a digital agency that works with mission-driven organizations across strategy, design, technology, and data. We've partnered with thousands of organizations for over 25 years now, including on emerging technologies like AI, as well as things like web design and product development, data and analytics, and overall digital strategy and transformation. And we're thrilled to be co-presenting today with our AI partner, Exchange Design. So Chris, can you give us a quick intro to Exchange Design and how you're helping organizations navigate this new AI landscape?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris New. Exchange Design is a mission-driven organization. We've had about 3 years of experience helping our partners adopt AI and data science to drive sustainable solutions for their work. That typically falls into 3 pillars. So the first is data quality and AI readiness. We like to joke that a lot of times AI problems are really 3 data problems in a trench coat. We'll also look at model agnostic AI management. So one of our core beliefs is that our partners shouldn't be locked into any one solution. They should be able to take the best of what's coming in the AI development space and leverage it for their needs. The third is AI capacity strengthening and support. A key belief we have is that every organization is going to have to migrate to some level of AI incorporation into their work, and we were here to help them make sure their team is upskilled and that they have someone to call in that journey. And we've worked with a range of partners from the nonprofit and government space, and we'll get into that a little bit as we go in.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. And part of today's session, we're going to start by exploring why AI adoption needs to look different for nonprofits and government agencies. Really want to highlight here specific constraints and opportunities that make this space unique. And then we're going to dig into some of the most common challenges we're seeing organizations face when it comes to trying to adopt AI, things like lack of clarity, limited internal capacity, or tools that aren't really translating in impact. And then from there, we want to walk through how to move your strategy forward. So where we're seeing success, what kinds of use cases are gaining traction, and really how to tie AI back to mission and organizational goals, which is really the whole point at the end of the day. So, and then finally, like I said, we'll wrap up with time for your questions. So feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A section as we go. So I want to start out here by grounding this a bit more in context. And that context is that as we've been working in the space and more with AI, we're really seeing that mission-driven organizations face unique pressures. They focus on impact over profit. Often, all of you operate under tight technical and tight budget constraints and have high standards necessarily and requirements when it comes to things like ethics and privacy. And that's why when looking at AI adoption in the spaces we all work in, we have to do it under more than just an efficiency lens, which is often the lens that more corporate entities are looking at. But a lot of those things are also true for broader technology adoption in the mission-driven space, and not just for AI adoption. If you're developing a website, for example, there's still high ethical standards to meet. You need to make sure it's accessible. You need to make sure the content's trustworthy and accurate. So what really makes AI different? And for AI and generative AI in particular, we don't really see it as a trend, but more as a technology wave that is and will continue to really change everything. So from how we think about developing technical solutions to how we're engaging with audiences to really at a foundational level how we operate as organizations. But the good news is that this isn't the first time we've seen technology waves like this. Yes, the implications of AI are likely to be larger and than previous waves, but it's still a wave nonetheless. And we've seen this type of thing play out before. Forum One was founded in the early days of online forums, helping nonprofits and public agencies create spaces to build community. And as open source tools emerged, we supported the first generation of mission-driven websites. We led partners through the mobile and cloud shift and helped build data-informed cultures during the data era. And we really see AI as the next wave, and one will fundamentally reshape how all organizations, including yours, will have to operate. And one that is really vital for both nonprofit organizations and government agencies to get a handle on and really develop solid strategies around. And one of those areas AI is changing old models is when it comes to IT. So if we look at traditional IT that generally operated on predictability, so fixed life cycles, reliable tools, and really more or less understood technical risk. And AI upends a lot of that entirely. It's more dynamic, it's probabilistic, and it's fast moving. The talent requirements are different. The risk profile is broader, including when it comes to legal and reputational risk. And the potential impact is also more orders of magnitude greater, both positive and negative impact when it comes to your organization. And from our vantage point, what we see is that organizations that will succeed are those that adapt their mindset and not just their tool set. So I want to dive a bit deeper into how these changes specifically impact mission-driven organizations. So I want to bring in Chris. Chris, you're working closely with a range of nonprofits and public sector teams. How are you really seeing the unique needs of these sectors show up in their approach to AI?
Absolutely. And also I'm just enjoying reading the chat right now. I see Eric Swanson was a former neighbor of you all at the Open Gov Hub. So I think a range of organizations joining from those spaces who I think are wrestling with these exact issues. And what they all have in common, and not to repeat what you said earlier, is that there are greater considerations than the profit motive in terms of how these organizations work and who they serve. Often there's a focus on impact rather than profit. There's a focus on trust and fairness, which is often at odds with how AI works, at least in terms of how it's often presented to our partners. Technical capacity and budget, we'll get into that next, but AI can be expensive, and people who are experts in the space, particularly so, and that's often a challenge for nonprofits who are resource constrained or often have limitations, and governments who often have other considerations around hiring. Data governance and privacy for companies who have to deal with their customer data. I think that's one thing. If you're dealing with information about, say, vulnerable populations or dealing with sensitive information, that's a different category altogether in terms of what you're able to experiment with and how you look at these lenses. And the last one's just, frankly, procurement, bureaucracy. This space looks radically different this year than it did last year. And for many of our partners, they're looking at quarterly or sometimes annual cycles of making these types of decisions. And it's not impossible, but it's particularly tricky in a space that's moving this quick. So we talk about solutions need to be smart, they need to be fast, and they need to be ethical. And so just very quickly, jumping into this, the smart piece I think is critical because it's not actually one of my favorite, there's a comment going around of like, oh yeah, my brain's bigger, so I'm so much faster. It's like, okay, so you're doing a better job. No, I'm dumb faster. And I think you're seeing a lot of that right now in the AI space where they're not leveraging existing domain expertise. They're not continuing to make improvements over time. And I think there's this idea of how do we create new value and not just introduce new risks. The second is fast. Our partners need help now in many cases, and they're thinking about how can AI solve my problems. It's beyond just accelerating workflow automation. It's about creating real-time insights for organizations to understand what they're already doing and how do they make decisions around it. And of course, the last piece is ethical, which is prioritizing transparency, accountability, bias mitigation. And I think this also goes back to the idea of who does AI serve and how do organizations think about this? Our focus is on serving the people who serve our partners and not trying to replace them, but trying to build a future that leverages what they know and are able to do in a smart and fast way.
And all of those things that you just spoke to, Chris, are really why Forum One and Exchange Design partnered in the first place. So we recognize that solving the unique challenges of nonprofits and government agencies in this space isn't just about having the right AI tools. It's about bringing together the right people, the right strategy, and the right support to move those ideas to move things from ideas to outcomes. And we're both deeply embedded in mission-driven work. So Forum One brings decades of experience helping organizations build scalable digital platforms, and Exchange Design brings a ton of technical depth in data science and AI implementation. And together, we feel we can help partners think strategically about where AI fits and then actually deliver it and help organizations build real capacity when it comes to AI. And that's how we're talking about AI as more than just a set of tools and more as a major shift in both technology and the capabilities of mission-driven organizations. But a question we're often hearing is how are organizations approaching those challenges differently over time? So, Chris, want to hear from you when you're working with organizations on this. What's changed over the past year or so, and how people are really thinking about AI?
Yeah, I mean, we'll go to the next slide, which is you're seeing this, I think, let's start with the tech companies. You're seeing more and more investment dollars going to companies that are focused on AI and machine learning. So last quarter, I think it was something like 70% of venture dollars went to companies focusing on AI and ML. And you're seeing the tech space, at the very least, 1 in 4 tech jobs are now requesting AI. So this is a little chart of what that looked like since the ChatGPT release. And that's gone up 70%. So I think tech companies are already thinking about how do we incorporate AI into our workflow. And I think this is indicative of a larger trend, which is the risk has gone from are we ready to adopt AI to this idea of are we being left behind if we don't? We'll go to the next slide. And I think for at least for our government partners and our nonprofit partners, that has to be acknowledged is that this is also happening at a time of a funding squeeze in terms of where they're looking at resources and how they're making decisions. So we have government funders who are, for whatever reasons, unable to fund programs that they had been able to in the past. So on our side, we've worked with partners like USAID, CDC, WHO. And I think there's a consideration there of like, well, okay, well, how do we leverage this if we can't purchase, at least in terms of what they know. This hope that individual donations would fill the gap. I think there's been some, at least from the foundation side, but that hasn't borne out, at least in terms of individual donors for a lot of our nonprofit partners. And so I think there's got to be a recognition that there's tremendous uncertainty as terms of what donors and government and nonprofit partners are seeing in terms of the regulatory space, in terms of how they're able to spend money and what they're able to spend. So I think we have to balance those two pieces in whatever conversations we have about AI adoption.
Beth, want to bring you in here. Does that align with kind of what you're seeing when we're working with clients? What are you really seeing as the motivators for why organizations are looking to adopt AI, and what advantages are they finding in it?
Yeah, I mean, I think just kind of piggybacking off some of the things that you guys have actually already talked about, which is just that folks are really, really stressed and overburdened. And even just internally, we were talking last night that so much of our work, we don't have enough time. So we've been using these tools on an individual level just to get a minute back to ourselves or to potentially refocus that time to do more strategic thinking. And that's something I hear all the time when I work with nonprofits or even government colleagues. And according to the Twilio 2024 report, 90% of nonprofits are already leveraging AI in one or more of their use cases. And that's compared to I think it was around 65% for public or for-profit organizations. And I think that just speaks to the fact that these tools are kind of a long-awaited need that has been something that folks have been kind of quick to start experimenting. The second thing is audiences are really expecting a high level of personalization, kind of based on their experience they're seeing from, like I said, Amazon or other types of e-commerce or for-profit types of experiences. So, commercial experience has really raised the bar, certainly in terms of instant chat or just kind of recommendations, just the way that they've been able to hyper personalize is what's expected at this point. And also from that Twilio report, they're saying that 64% of Gen Z and 56% of millennials will abandon brands that don't meet their personalization expectations. And so, there's just a risk that these people, our audiences can leave if we're not providing the experience. So folks will drop off, we'll have lower engagement in our digital spaces. And so that's really, I think, driving a lot of the work that's been done at the nonprofit level. The next one is just like AI is going to help us do a lot of really hard things in this space, around understanding our audience needs, prototyping, just, user-centered design has been such a great process for us to follow and to work with, and certainly product discovery, processes have been helpful, but they're also just hard. And so AI is helping with, analyze, doing research insights and synthesize interviews and move through that user-centered design process just so much quicker. Also, I was just currently doing a workshop here in Minneapolis, and the team was able to we were doing some blue sky ideation, and the things that were coming out of that ideation weren't really so different than the things that have been coming out over the last 10 years or so around just like a really personalized experience with recommendations and drawing people in with like really engaging stories. Like those things have been thought of ahead of time, but now it's like we might actually have the technology to do this in a efficient way. So I'm really excited to see how kind of that space continues to evolve. And then the last one is just, I mean, like, I think, Chris, you said it right off. Like, people are feeling like if they don't get on board, they are going to be left behind. And so, there's like a lot of pressure just to start putting together, AI prototypes and things like that. And so, what I'm really focused on is helping organizations think through how they can use these tools to really drive their outcomes that they've already been working on in their mission.
So a lot of really good reasons and observations there of why organizations are looking to adopt AI, but beyond why people are looking to adopt it. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the challenges they're facing. So many orgs see the potential, but seem to be struggling to move it forward. In fact, for any of you that joined our webinar a couple months back on the state of digital experience, we did a poll there, and what we found in the poll of our audience was that organizations were really looking to do more with AI, but hadn't actually made a lot of progress yet for a number of different reasons. So wanted to get a poll out there again and take a pause here for a moment and hear from all of you. So I want to do a quick poll. You should see it pop up on your screen here in a second. And this one is single choice. So pick your top option, and really want to know what is the biggest challenge you're seeing when it comes to using AI at your organization. A lot of similar answers coming in here. We will, everyone will see the results once we close the poll out here. A lot of people concerned about ethics and risk, a lot of gaps in technical expertise we're seeing. Don't know where to start, and data isn't ready is kind of what I'm seeing as the leaders here. So yeah, I think give everyone another second here. Looks like most people have had a chance to vote. Cool. I will share the results now. And yeah, I mean, it looks like the top result is concerns over ethics and risk, and then certainly don't know where to start. So gaps in understanding of good use cases, gaps in technical expertise, lack of leadership buy-in, and data not being ready. So yeah, I think that aligns with a lot of what we have been seeing as well. Chris, what are your thoughts there? Do the results there kind of align with what you've been seeing with working with clients? What are some of the most common blockers or issues you're seeing organizations run into when it comes to AI adoption?
I think those are dead on. I mean, I think the
Yeah.
ethics and risk piece. I mean, we've ourselves. I mean, working in the space for basically since ChatGPT became available for individuals and organizations. It's not even the risks that are known; it's the unknown risks that we're seeing, at least in terms of, say, applying like LLMs to RAGs, retrieval augmented generation, and talking to your documents, and suddenly it's like, oh wow, that's a new risk. There's new ethical considerations and risks around. I think I've just posted, but there's a great analysis done by a firm called Darkbench, looking beyond OpenAI's recent, like boosting and saying happy talk and agreeing with you, agreeableness. to sort of like other common problems that they're seeing in terms of the widely released public models. So I think those are spot on in terms of ethics and risks of adoption. I think just kind of going through these, and I don't want to go too far before Beth gets in the strategy piece, but one of the key things here is the lack of in-house expertise. Often, somebody to help understand those risks and trade-offs and chart a course. And so there's ones where we're seeing the rise of independent technical advice, or at least in the AI space, beyond just what you're going to get from an account manager at your tech provider. Helping understand that, helping to unpack those different pieces. Team capacity and alignment. I mean, and we'll talk a bit about this, but a lot of times it's not so much that folks aren't excited individually about the potential of AI for their work. It's that there's questions as to how do we use this collaboratively and to achieve business value. Rapid prototyping. In a space where it's not clear what's safe and what's ethical, it can be really tough to even experiment, to pick a use case and to move the needle. So one of the things that we've seen is, how do you create safe environments to experiment and understand the value? Often that means open source or free solutions or different ways of just getting your feet wet and sort of seeing how it goes. Solution agnostic support, I think that goes back to number one, but I think also thinking about the long tail. For those in tech, there's a phenomenon of enshittification. Folks get just started on a platform, and then before you realize it, oh, there's extra costs. Oh, it doesn't do that. Oh, there's this other piece. Having the ability to get support that is independent of those workflows can be critical. And the last one's integration with existing IT. I think one of the challenges we've seen for some of our partners is IT very reasonably has considerations as to what they're going to allow integrations with. How are they handling, penetration testing? What are the different pieces of compliance? I can't say this enough. Like, these are your friends. Yes, AI is going to touch every part of your business, but I think this part has to go back to integrating with your existing systems and delivering value on top of it. So I think honest conversations as to what does that look like at an enterprise or a specific use case.
So Beth, what do you see as the best way to kind of help people start moving their AI strategy forward, working through some of these challenges that people have, whether it be um, capacity gaps, lack of use cases, ethical questions, that kind of stuff? How do you help clients kind of frame their thinking and identify use cases that are going to be relevant, make sense for them, and ultimately successful?
Yeah, I mean, what I work with clients and projects and teams to do is really think about how AI can be an enabler of the same goals and objectives that they already have, that are already guiding their organization. So if it doesn't advance a strategic goal, it might be a distraction. And I think that's been a lot of the conversations that we've been having over the last few months. In this diagram, you'll see kind of, I'm trying to be as agnostic here as I can about kind of an org strategy. But at the top, you're going to have that main North Star or mission impact goal, why your organization exists. And at this point, there's, that doesn't really change with AI. And then underneath that, you'll have either your kind of key goals or objectives, the things that the 12 to 36 month targets that will hopefully move the needle towards your North Star. And those things can also stay the same. That, at this point, not to say that they don't change, they always change, they're always moving. But, where I'm encouraging folks is actually to think about that next level down, which are your drivers. So the core levers that, are already in your strategic plan, the programs, departments, digital products, or, field operations, maybe partnerships that work to influence those core objectives that your organization have. And then underneath that, you have, your teams and individuals who, either organize through some hierarchy or self-organization that work together to accomplish those drivers. And I think at that kind of that layer up, that where organizations and teams are starting to think about scaling, how do we use AI as a team? The best way is really to surface as a team some frictions, what in the various programs, and there's no shortage of these on any kind of project team or product. So they should not be hard, but like documenting them and bringing them together and surfacing them as a team and working together to figure out, where could prediction or, content or code generation or even just classification, automation, like where could those types of activities unblock some value? Um, and and then there's a process for determining which use cases could be most useful. But that's the level that I feel like we're moving toward.
So to paint a little bit brighter of a picture of people, like what is beyond the framework, how to think about it, like what does that look like? How have you seen that look for various clients? Are there what drivers are you seeing that organizations are finding the most success in today?
Yeah, there's so many different ways that people are starting to explore. And I just kind of came up with some categories based on what felt like the most common. I'm curious other people's experience if they have use cases outside of these various categories. But you see five here. And the first is, we've been talking a little bit more about unblocking, efficiencies within your team, within the project team, within the product. This is where AI can help automate tasks like data entry or, double entry in many cases, help with content generation, content like tagging, and maybe content generation and SEO. Like there's just like so many little things that people do that take so much time that AI can really help with. Certainly like reporting, AI can help with that. So these are things that have been already happening at the individual level, but that can potentially be scaled up to the project level if they haven't already. Can also help create easier workflows and reduce bottlenecks because maybe moving out or helping, streamline different processes. So it really helps teams create capacity. It can help teams create capacity to potentially think more strategically. The second one, which I'm really kind of in the midst of right now, is really thinking how AI can help accelerate value to audiences. Um, you know, this has been something that, in terms of just like building relationships, having personalized experiences for audiences, has been something I feel like a lot of teams really aspire to, but it's just been really hard. And so, AI can deliver that. It can help you create content. It can create connections. It can suggest relevant experiences. It also they're just like an incredible opportunity in this space specifically. Also, building strategic foresight. So AI can help surface trends or help synthesize data or generate like predictions. And this is something that, we kind of recognize that like not every team has a data scientist. And so I feel like a lot of teams I'm realizing are using this to help make sense of their data. And I think that's great. And that's kind of part of the process is figuring out what types of things could be learned that could help guide us. I also think some leadership teams are using AI to help do some scenario planning, which is fascinating to me because typically those are done in like a more, general like workshop process or something. And to have AI be the tool that helps you think through what could be coming is just a great way to get maybe a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of planning. So helping you really navigate that uncertainty. And then the fourth one here is amplify resource generation and storytelling. Not only with just like content experiences, but I think around like enhancing your ability to write grants or help with donor engagement. That's mostly just like content, automating messaging, and that's going to be like tailored to specific audiences. I think that really helps build trust and, can inspire action and support, which is great. And then the last one here is expand reach and inclusion. the ability of AI to help us remove barriers like language or literacy or geography have just been, it's really incredible. So you can just, and it can also help make your content more accessible. Certainly, helping ensure that there's more participation in your audiences and your content.
Thanks, Beth. So want to take a beat again here and hear from all of you. Are those use cases Beth just spoke to, kind of do they seem the most relevant to you, what you're seeing? Where are you the most interested in applying AI in your organization? And this one is multiple choice, so feel free to select as many as are relevant to you, that you're interested in looking at AI for. Also, like with the last one, if there's an option you're looking at that's not here, please drop it in the comments, share it with everyone. We're always interested to hear about new use cases or new ways people are trying to apply AI.
Also, just while we're waiting on the poll responses, I see a great comment from Kelly about using Gen AI for basic SEO and basic lines of code for managing your personal WordPress site. If you want to share more about which tools you're using for that, that'd be awesome. Just to understand that. I mean, there's also, I think Google's using like 25% of new codes generated by AI. Microsoft's like 30%. Oh, new survey's not appeared. Oh, okay. Well, hopefully it's going now. And Yatra, yeah, same in terms of workflows and documentation. We'll talk a little bit about, automating workflows and multi-step agents. So if you've got more details you feel like you want to share, please do.
Yeah, it looks like our survey may have gotten a little messed up. The options look like they're half from the last survey and half from this one. So what of the relevant options, looks like people are interested in kind of using it for content generation, personalizing audience experiences, supporting fundraising and grant making. But I think we lost a few of the options on here in the poll. So apologize for that. But good to see that people are interested in a number of these use cases anyway. So we will go ahead and, knowing that the poll got messed up a little bit, we will go ahead and end that and move on. Thank you for throwing in what issue there. So want to dive a little bit deeper into a couple of those that people are interested in and that Beth had called out. So starting with kind of using AI to unlock efficiency that Beth and you have mentioned a couple times, Chris. When it comes to unlocking internal efficiencies, how do you really see that play out in practice? Is that just about getting stuff done? Is there more to it than that? What does unlocking efficiencies mean? Can you dive a little deeper on that?
Geez, I mean, both think efficiency is a new way of working. I mean, I think Gen AI is to knowledge work what the steam engine was to physical labor. And the idea of like there's some pieces that I think are more efficiently done through currently available AI solutions. So I'm seeing, I think Kelly mentioned using ChatGPT and Grok and Claude for writing and for code. There's just pieces of everyday workflows that I think are going to be done faster and often more thorough, leveraging Gen AI solutions. But that doesn't mean that they should be totally outsourced in that respect. There's a great, I should put the link in. I put a link in also to the sort of the dark bench piece, but I should put the link into the Microsoft report on frontier firms because I think they do a nice way of saying phase one was really about individuals with assistance for efficiency. Phase two is sort of like individuals and like moving beyond just one chatbot. Maybe you've got an agent, maybe you've got a chatbot you use for one thing or for writing, or different for code, and moving towards what they call like human agent teams. So they talk about agent bosses and sort of you have AI solutions out there doing parts of the knowledge work that are repetitive or that can be easily described. And the humans are in charge of making sure that they're adding value, that they're aligned with the company values, that they're being used creatively to sustain competitive advantages. So I think that's where we're going. We'll keep going to the next slide. I don't want to take too much time because we'll leave time for questions. But one of the challenges in working in the AI and ML space is that we're often working inside of organizations with their data and with their communities. And I'm a big fan of when we can take a moment and hear directly from our partners. So I just shared this interview we did with John and Jeff from Cerdna, or now currently Mellon. But I think they were looking at how do you create efficiencies, and their general advice was start with a small project. So make sure you're not spreading all your firepower out over a huge amount of problem space. Focus extensively on data quality. Make sure that the data going in is helping you identify those efficiencies and generate them. And the last was just on leadership buy-in. So keep going. And I think that matches up with what this is also full credit. I think Brian Pond on our team put this slide together. And I think this does match what we're seeing for a lot of our partners, which is efficiencies, we often look at this first gap of moving from individuals experimenting, going, gosh, I'm so much faster on my personal WordPress site or on this email I've got to write, or other pieces, to going, well, how do I use this for that report we have to do every week? Or how do I use this for thinking about client engagement and personalization that's baked into, say, our CRM like Salesforce, or baked into our email lists? That I think is a great place to start when you're looking at generating efficiencies and starting to think about what are repetitive tasks and workflows. Go next slide. And I think this is also a piece of, where we're going. I think in general, let me actually put in a link to N8N. So what you're seeing to N8N. So one of my favorite solutions at the moment for rapid prototyping, we use Streamlit a lot of times when we do, we call it grounded chatbots and basic RAG, for those who want to use their own sort of sources and filters on their own corpus and documents. But we're seeing more around this idea of like workflow automation, particularly in the efficiency space and beyond. That looks different for every organization, and those workflows are often as unique to the individuals and the teams and the clients that they serve. And so what you're seeing a lot of times, I think, is, well, you drop an RFP in this document and you get a first draft of your proposal spit out the other side. Well, often there's several steps happening underneath, maybe with different databases, data stores, different models being applied to that problem. And we like to say, like, this isn't about solving it once. This is about building and then testing and tweaking and leveraging the insights of the organization to make sure that that's constantly generating the value it needs to be at an efficiency.
Jumping ahead here, Beth, to thinking about accelerating value to audiences, are there ways you're seeing organizations use AI to better connect with those they serve? What does that look like in practice in your experience?
Yeah, I think AI is going to help us do this even better. So, not just around the ability to, provide service 24/7, answering questions through like kind of AI chatbots that would certainly drive value, folks getting their questions answered when they need it. But really honing in on that personalization, and, especially in larger, with various product teams, it's been a challenge to really align and understand the product market fit of your tool. I'll give an example of that in a little bit, but just also being able to create those scalable, personalized experiences, which I think has just been really out of reach for many organizations. So I'm personally really excited about that and how AI can help with that. But I do have as someone who does quite a bit of product discovery, different ways that teams are thinking about how do we use AI to help drive value for our users. So the first example is with the AARP Livability Index. You want to go to the next slide? Okay. So for those of you who are unaware, the AARP Livability Index is an interactive website that helps it's a platform that allows community or people to come, consumers, policymakers, and advocates to put in their zip code and see how their community scores when it comes to livability. And the scoring is based on 61 data points, so 61 indicators, and kind of ranges in critical categories such as housing, neighborhood, transportation, health, engagement, environment, among others. And the challenge with this, the team came and we were trying to figure out how can AI support consumers as they consider the livability of their score, of their neighborhood, and how driving them to be more engaged on these topics and making life decisions about maybe where they live or types of resources they're going to need as they age, thinking more long term about their community. And so, the objective of this tool is to really increase the influence of community livability as a factor for personal and policy decisions. And one of the things that the team has been really struggling with over the years is that, we know that, storytelling and personalization can really drive engagement, and make these kind of abstract scores much more, personal, much more useful to people so that they can actually use it to make their decisions. And so, but this has just been really hard. It's hard, if you think about it, like every single zip code is going to have its own story. And of course, people have their own needs and desires and within those different regions. So some of the things that the team are kind of exploring is how to use, generative AI to create localized content at scale. Like imagine every zip code having its own story and pulling in examples from the community. And so obviously there's a lot of risk involved with that because you don't want to have bad content out there or help, this, have information that might not facilitate good living decisions. Another way is to generate a more personalized recommendations for how to engage more in your community. So these are just areas that the team is exploring through product discovery practices. So, prototyping different things and then testing it with users, prototyping more, testing with users, working to get a product market fit that like really helps drive engagement. And the next example, this one is really personal to me because it's something I do quite a bit, but we're just working and kind of playing with the idea of, during a user-centered design process, typically how that process has worked is, understanding your audiences, trying to figure out what are their jobs to be done, what are things that would really help them engage or urge them or encourage them to engage with your content or your product, whatever service, whatever it is that you have. And then ideating around solving those problems. And what has been kind of the challenge is, typically, right, then you want to prototype something and have it put before users. And now, while that process isn't always that long, typically the prototypes have been in maybe, paper, or like more recently, we've been using, Figma clickable prototypes or something like that. But the opportunity now to literally just like type in some product requirements, you can even ask these tools to clone the current site so they have like a really real feel, has been incredible. And it has also allowed us to test many more of our product hypothesis questions that we have that are going to help us make better product decisions and as we move towards like an MVP. So in this case, I have an example of working, digital museum reaching K through 12 museum visitors, and creating especially targeted towards high school students. So what we can do through kind of the structured design sprint process, which helps teams move from, kind of product hypothesis to actually getting it in front of users within 5 days. We used to, again, only be able to test it maybe like one of those 4 questions. And now we can maybe test like 3 or 4 different prototypes with users to answer more of our questions before we move to the next phase. Oh, you're on mute, Brian.
Help find myself here. So Beth, how should organizations kind of think about AI as more than just isolated tools? So we've gone through a lot of use cases here, a lot of different tools, but how do you help them think beyond that and think about it more as a piece of their larger digital strategy?
Yeah, I think right where we've been, and this is just kind of echoing what Chris, you talked about, is maybe teams really, and clearly a lot of nonprofits are already doing a lot of experimentation at the individual level, seeing benefit with it. And then the next step is to think, okay, well, how do we start to think about this at the project or product level? The kind of beyond the personal shortcuts. And like anything, this is going to require collaboration and the ability to make decisions as groups are going to be cross-functional considerations. So what we are really focused on is helping people think about and insert and ensure that the user is at the core of those decisions. So looking at what are ways that we can really align to drive impact for our audiences, for our organization, and not just have it be kind of like its own separate silo. And so that's been what I've been focused on.
We've got about 15 minutes left here. I do want to save time for questions, but just to close this out a little bit here, thinking about how to move AI strategy forward? Beth and Chris, I'd love to hear from each of you. What's the one thing organizations should do as kind of a first step or a next step when it comes to AI? What's going to help organizations the most when it comes to being successful and moving their AI strategy forward and actually seeing results and outcomes?
Yeah, I think my number one advice would be, think partnerships, not product. A lot of focus right now is on, oh, Google's building this and OpenAI is building that. If you're joining from one of those organizations, congratulations. But for most of our partners in the nonprofit and government space, they're trying to find ways to stitch together the best available technology and deliver value for their communities and their teams. And I think that partnership rather than a product approach is going to lead them to a much better place. I think in that process, just think about, how are you going to support things in-house? How are you going to manage these solutions and workflows? How are you going to bound and have predictable costs? The runaway compute problem is real, and it can sneak up on even the most cautious folks. Creating a shared understanding of risk. How do you start to say, okay, well, what data can we play around with? What are the ways that we're going to think about keeping this safe in ways that are in alignment with our values? And I think the last piece is just, what's the saying? Keep an open mind, but not so open your brain falls out. A lot of organizations are thinking about brand reputation, trust from their teams, from their communities, thinking about a trust first approach. And that means accountability, transparency, and just, yeah, I think, acknowledging that these tools are new. A lot of tech companies are passing that risk on to you. So thinking about a trust first approach.
I think I have three here. Sorry, Brian, more than one. But the first one is just continue experimentation and lower the friction to do that. I think, uh, it's really easy to be like, immediately think of like, well, how could this scale? Should we even bother with it? And yeah, then you're just stuck. So you need to let people find the benefit and experiment with experimentation and different tools. So if that's something where you're at with your organization, just really encourage it. I know that's something we actively do at Forum One, which I appreciate. Just lower friction, help people should be able to sign up for tools, as needed as they think it might help. You can always evaluate their effectiveness later. The second one is just like any kind of, you're constantly maybe in a rhythm of checking your product or your retrospectives or strategy sessions around your service. Continue to do that. And then also you have new tools available that can maybe help you solve some of these frictions that have existed for a long time. And so one of the things that we've been doing more of is just facilitating a workshop where people can come together and actually focus on what are the biggest problems that they're having that are, blockers for their product or service strategy, that are blocking value to the audience, and like have a real structured conversation around that where you can gather those, prioritize them, and then start thinking about use cases that could apply some of those prioritized problems that you're already facing on your team. And yeah, and then you can set up maybe some lower risk prototypes of what could be solutions there. And that's where Chris and his team have been really invaluable for us. Thinking through and then, test it. Test it with users, test it with your team. Don't forget that part. That's the reason why you prototype. So test it, get feedback on it, and continue to iterate it. Just because you have a prototype doesn't mean that's your solution. It's just a way of putting something out there to gather feedback and a place to continue to iterate. And then the last one is, this is going to change how resources are allocated at your organization. And so thinking through, I know there's, 3-6 months annual reviews of strategy. Continue to do that. Don't just think that this is going to be, you've got to continue to refresh your strategy from an organizational level. So you might have another 6 months runway, but I think at some point this is really going to change the whole landscape of how we can really think about our growth and even those objectives at that goal level. Like, what could we accomplish? So I don't know, I'm really bullish on AI and how it can help mission-driven organizations. So that's what I would say.
Cool. Well, thank you, Beth and Chris. And a quick plug here, if you'd like help with any of this as part of the Forum 1 and Exchange Design Partnership, we've brought everything we've talked about today, strategy, prototyping, and enablement, into a single offering we're calling our AI Accelerator. So it's designed really to help mission-driven organizations go from idea to working AI prototype quickly and responsibly. Whether you're exploring your first use case or need a structured path to scale something you've already started. This is really built to meet you where you are and really focused on the needs of mission-driven organizations in a way that we haven't really seen with other offerings and other partners and what's out there. So the engagement really offers everything from strategic AI impact and ethical workshops to rapid prototyping sprints to optional AI expertise in the form of fractional chief AI officers, how we're kind of really positioning the expertise piece. And our goal with this offering, like I said, is to really help mission-driven organizations come away with strategic alignment around AI, help them reduce their risk, and accelerate adoption at the end of the day of what we see as a critical capability for nonprofits and government agencies moving forward. And you can choose to engage with our full accelerator that we typically like to run over a 12-week period, or we can work with you on individual services as well. So if you're only interested in starting with just a workshop or just rapid prototyping, we can do that as well. And our goal really is to make this flexible, fast, and low risk, so that you can move from kind of really thinking about AI to actually applying it in your organization. So if you're thinking about how to move your AI strategy forward, we'd love to talk more. So please reach out. And with that, we will open it up to Q&A. We've got a number of questions in already, but if you haven't yet, please drop them in the Q&A, and we will go through in order that we have received them. So starting out here, Chris, I think first question we got is around self-hosting, and I can go through the question, but I think it kind of aligns a bit with your kind of main conclusion on partnerships over product. So I'll pitch this to you, but the question is, I was excited to learn about self-hosting as an option, and then read without proper technical expertise to implement something like that, it would open up its own set of serious risks. Can you speak to whether self-hosting could be an option, especially for small nonprofits that may not have a huge IT team?
I mean, there's not an easy answer. I mean, I look at it as, kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of problem. I mean, I think, just for the piece I'll say is a lot of large companies right now, I mean, we've recently experienced like Vertex AI and others where they're very much saying, like, oh, just give us all your data. Don't worry about it. Just give it to us and we'll give you a nice, beautiful, output on the other side. There's massive risks there as well for data privacy and compliance and frankly costs for runaway compute. For self-hosting, I mean, we've done everything from like, okay, so actually we haven't used 5.4, but Microsoft has some amazing small models with like 5.3. We've done some self-hosting, like taking a wireless card out and just kind of, experimenting with it. My main background is in helping international development organizations and formerly the U.S. Institute of Peace. And so looking at localization, using open source solutions, low connectivity environments. I mean, there's amazing solutions out there and getting better by the day. And then we've been doing that with, well, we can go into it. But for small nonprofits, I mean, I think that the biggest challenge is like, that has other risks in terms of trying to do things yourself, in terms of how you host it and go forward. So I mean, there's not really an easy answer there, depending on what you're trying to do. But there are some really cool small models out there that we found have created that option for some of our partners, particularly in low connectivity environments. So different solutions there, and I'd play around with some other stuff out there before diving in too far.
Next question. What are, for both of you really, what are some of your favorite AI tools and what sets them apart?
Oh, so many. I've been talking about Beth, please.
Oh yeah. Okay. So my number one right now is lovable.dev. And it's literally, you can like type in, first of all, you can have it clone your whole website or your whole product, be like, clone my whole thing, and then say, here's how I would like it to change. Just like type in like normal plain language prompts, and you can create a whole interactive prototype for any product that is currently out there. And we're using it a lot, actually. I was at a workshop here in Minneapolis, where we're rethinking kind of their collections for their museum website. So they're like all that data. And we're, able to prototype something and then get kind of initial feedback, even if it's just internally, like, this experience makes sense. We just like literally ideated and kind of like worked together to collaborate on what this could look like. But it's all just in like big whiteboard paper. So we're gonna prototype it tomorrow, and we'll have a working prototype within 30 minutes. So I highly recommend that one. I'm curious about yours, Chris and Brian.
Oh God. So the ones I've been talking about in the chat are we use Streamlit for our rapid prototyping, particularly around grounded chatbots, and we're using NADEN for our agent workflows. I've also started to really enjoy BotPress and a different solution called Boodlebox, which we're hopefully featuring in our course. I'll put a link in there for a shameless plug for our online course. For my day-to-day though, to be perfectly honest, I love Notebook LM. I think it's great for a lot of the research tasks that I've got in terms of fairly simple but extremely powerful use for what I'm trying to do from day to day. I found Claude is really great for mimicking my writing styles, and I think different, especially since it was like Sonnet was the update that it started to get really good and let you use your personal styles and start to plug that into different solutions. I am blown away by 11 Labs. So I used to do a lot of online course development. And one of the things we talk a lot about is like media richness. So like moving from like one shot asynchronous text to like voice and video and beyond. And I just did a workshop actually with Hilton, and I was like, well, how do I summarize this for folks who weren't there last time? And what I did is I took my public facing blog post and I went to 11 Labs, and then I trained a conversational agent on my own voice. It took under a minute. And then I used that blog post as the corpus. And I said, okay, talk to facilitator Chris and ask him questions about the workshop we did last year. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty darn good. And it's only getting better. So I think it's one of those pieces of like, we're starting off in asynchronous kind of chat, but we're not staying here. It's moving fast.
Jumping ahead here, how do you fund or justify AI investment to leadership or boards? Beth, maybe send that one your direction.
Yeah, I mean, you show them the impact. And I think that's where it all comes back to aligning whatever it is that you're experimenting with to some sort of outcome, whether that's for audiences or for internal efficiencies, but something that's going to drive and push the needle and all the way up to your mission of your organization. So that's how we're really framing it with our clients, because what's the point of doing something if it's not going to drive value? And if it drives value, and typically like you could show the improvement or show the opportunity even with just a prototype or something, say this drove 30% more engagement, or this workflow created that normally takes 30 hours, we were able to do in 2 hours, and we were able to transition to thinking about something else, or driving more value to our audiences. I think that's the story that you have to be telling over and over again.
And we've got about a minute and a half, 2 minutes here, so probably time for one last question, then we will close out. Chris, what are some common red flags when it comes to AI adoption and evaluating vendors?
Geez. So we had also just one piece on the cost question. I think I'm least happy asking for costs that come out of overhead, and I'm most happy when I say, how can we help you generate more value with your organization? I think limited IT budgets are already under tremendous strain, and I think helping folks figure that piece out. Also, some big shout outs back and forth I see for Vercel, so I'll turn that over to you, Brian. Brian there. I think the number one red flag is this idea of like we're gonna buy this thing and it's gonna solve. The AI space is moving very quickly. I think an overconfidence and the sort of like we're buying our way out of this is the wrong way to go. I think the teams that are seeing the most value are making early investments, telling that story, learning from those stories, and then continuing on that journey. Yeah, so I'd say curiosity, not confidence. Confidence can sometimes I think be a problem that you're like, good, we did the AI thing, we got Copilot, we're good. That's a flag because I think this is going to be defined at least the next 5 years of my career in terms of how do we use this. So I think we're looking for partners who feel the same way.
Cool. Well, thank you, Chris and Beth, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. We'll send a follow-up email with slides, other resources, and contact info, as well as a recording. And like I mentioned before, if you're thinking about how to move your AI strategy forward, we'd love to talk to you more about it. So please reach out. And thanks to everyone for joining.